Welcome to today's episode of the Insurance, Life, and Everything in Between podcast. My name is Adam Brsan.
And I'm Chris Smith.
If you've yet to do so, hit that subscribe button so you never miss another episode. And if you love this podcast, don't forget to share it with a friend or colleague. We greatly appreciate your help and support.
All right, welcome into a special episode. The winter special was such a hit, we decided to have some more guests on to share some insight and some experience about our industry in a way that you guys have probably never heard before. Now, I don't know how many people are going to see this today, tomorrow, or in the future, but this is the kind of next level content that may not quite relate to the brand new producer, may not quite resonate with somebody learning how to knock a door or to set an appointment. But it's really designed to speak to the agency owners, the mid-level of the hierarchy, maybe even the higher end folks out there in the industry. Because Adam, I think I figured out what today's title is. It's what's wrong with the industry and how can we financially track it to protect people like you and me. How's that sound for today's topic?
Sounds good to me, boy. That's the one thing when I went independent, Chris. I had the luxury of working with a single carrier for 7.5 years where I had the access to pretty much all the business. I could track everything. I could every morning I could look up all of the reports and kind of see where everything was at, see where production was from the day prior, see which business was falling off. I mean, I was like a detective with it, honestly. I mean, I had my group, we had really good persistency because I kept up with that and I stayed ahead of the fraud and all the other bad, negative things that sometimes come up in the business. But when it comes to no longer being with that organization and going independent, I feel like we don't have as much of a luxury and access to as much of that. Or it's just very difficult to track all the bookkeeping behind the scenes. And so, no, I think I'm really looking forward to talking to Sean today.
Awesome. Sean from Post Rock Financial is on with us today to really dive into protecting the mid-level agency owner, working with IMOs, really uncovering what is really hard for agents to see when they're not working with a single carrier. So, Sean, if you wanted to introduce yourself and the company, and then we'll dive into it together.
Yeah, thanks, guys. So Post Rock Financial, entity that we started almost 6 years ago now. And it was part of coming into this space and helping a friend operate an IMO back in 2019. And as part of operating that IMO and me coming from outside this space, one of the things that was a challenge was the information, the accounting, agent performance, all of those things, risk management. And so as part of operating that IMO we identified some of these issues, and I'm going to take it a step back even further. So in the late 90s, early 2000s, we were one of the aggregators in the property and casualty insurance space, and one of the first, and became one of the largest with over 1,000 locations. And what we identified as part of that was so we did a lot of acquisitions, we did a lot of consolidation, and what's very similar is you have a lot of great sales professionals, a lot of great marketers, but typically that almost means they're probably not very good at a lot of the backroom type things. And so we handled and developed all of those systems and processes to take care of all the commission accounting, the reconciliation, and sales tracking, all of those kinds of things to allow them to do what they were really good at and go generate revenue. And so it was kind of that flashback when I came in to help with this IMO, identifying the same types of things, almost very similar, but even more extreme. And so we started to put processes in place with commission accounting and reconciliation. But then we said, okay, there's also risk here with the agent debt transfers and how do we identify early on and help these managers and these operators identify these potential problems before they're a problem or before there's something big. And so that's kind of where Post Rock Financial was born, is these systems and these processes. And we do a reconciliation, so it's not a data dump. There are part of this for us is about a true reconciliation that we tie back to deposits. So we match up commission statements with actual deposits. And then we took it to another level and said, okay, look, we need to provide operators with the ability to see what's happening on a almost live basis with daily submitted reports, so that they can identify potential problems, potential issues with an agent that's writing maybe bad business, or maybe an agent that needs training. And because of the information that we provide, it comes out mid-morning. And so it allows the operator to go through quickly and say, I need to spend some time with these agents, or I've got some agents that, boy, this agent hasn't been active for a while, and all of a sudden there's 7 policies that were just submitted. I need red flag. So that's kind of what we're doing. There's additional value and benefit as far as value creation for agency owners, for IMOs, and even builders. Those agents that have or want to have agents under them, again, they need this as much as anyone to identify. So, they could get into something where an agent or two takes them completely just out of the business and ruins it. And so,
I heard someone jokingly say on a podcast, I survived over $200,000 of roll up, and it's not funny. Like, that's not a good thing. That's someone that had people selling underneath them, but they were not actually observing what was happening, let alone receiving daily reports to take observation of it. Adam, you recently experienced a over $30,000 roll up from an agent that went on vacation instead of made payments toward its debt, and confessed to that via text message. And having line of sight nowadays, because of what you experienced and what I experienced, is almost like a necessity. And I think in our space where there's so much happening and so many of us are still out actively producing, we need to see in the morning what just happened yesterday so it doesn't catch us off guard. Sean, what do you think happens with these agencies that experience such massive 6-figure roll-ups? That, I mean, you've witnessed it being in the books with IMOs before. How does that kind of thing happen?
Well, and unfortunately, whether it's fraud involved, whether it's, typically it's something that is it's dishonest or it's fraud, whatever it might be. What I want to do is let's either try to avoid it entirely or limit it to a very small amount, because once it starts to happen, it happens fast. And so for us, that's why the daily submitted report became so important. But not only that, then, the commission reporting that shows chargebacks and shows, so it's not just the new business then. Okay, hey, they're writing business and things look right, and they're using leads that we know where they've gotten them from. But then as we start seeing the weekly, so we provide weekly and monthly commission reporting. And so weekly allows the operator to say, okay, hey, I'm really starting to see a flow of chargebacks come in here. I need to get on the phone with this agent and see what's going on. So what we want to try to do, and I think part of our biggest value is the risk management part, because it doesn't take long to pay for a service that can save you tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of dollars. And not only that, it can ruin your life, right? I mean, It can take away your livelihood for someone that is fraudulent activity, dishonest activity, whatever it might be. And maybe someone you think a lot of and has been around and done some things that doesn't stop a situation from happening like this.
No. And Adam, we saw it take place. We kept thinking to ourselves as we saw it, this will get better. That'll get better. It'll go down. Yeah. It doesn't. That snowballs so quickly and so catastrophically. To those watching, would you agree that when it gets to a certain point, it doesn't get better? Roll up, that is.
Oh, you talking to me? Yeah. No, it doesn't. I've kind of used that analogy of, like, if you're in a relationship and you think that the person you're with is like cheating on you, but you keep telling yourself that it's not happening. It's almost like that same sort of feeling. Like, you want to tell yourself that it's going to get better, but it just doesn't. You got to go with your gut. And I think the problem is, well, when the debt looks big, and then you're like, well, hopefully he'll do something to clear it up. And, and you don't shut it off soon enough, because it's always in the background. You're just hoping that things are going to get better, and they never do. They continue to, when it's going south, it's just going to keep going south unless you do something. You gotta stop it.
Yeah.
Now I had a question for Sean too, about like how you guys track all this stuff. Like, is it just off of like the commission statements? Are you able to get into like our different portals, like to be able to, like, I know some carriers are really good when it comes to providing a lot of that information. Others maybe are not. Like,
amen. Yeah.
is it just like a big equation really to try to put it
Now,
all together into one thing, or like how do you
here's
track it
what's
all?
yeah. So this was about developing expertise, and you know we deal with so many different carriers now from West Coast to East Coast, and it's about developing expertise. So, and part of this is there's a manual process to it, and then it gets kicked up to team leaders that then have to take that information and process it, and then ultimately goes up to, you know, a director like Kirsten Robinson that has, you know, been around with us for this entire time. But here's what we do. So everything is reconciled back to a deposit. So if you think about that, is if a deposit gets made today into your account with AMAM, then we go in and we pull that commission statement from the portal then, and we reconcile that deposit to that commission statement and take all of that information that's there. That's policy, insured name, policy number, premium, all the information that's available, we take and we reconcile and we put together and start the report. And so on the weekly basis, so this is whatever carriers an agency has, all of those commissions get reconciled, but it ties back to actual money that hits your account to commission statements, because that's what's, you know, that was one of the challenging things for me at the IMO level was, man, I see all these big numbers that people talk about, and I see the activity, and everything sounds great. Well, that doesn't mean revenue in the bank. That doesn't mean revenue that's going to flow to our bottom line. And so that's what's important for us in this process is everything is tied back to the penny. To any deposit gets made into the bank account gets tied back to that. Now, can there be debit balances? You know, okay, there's not a deposit, but there's a debit balance with that carrier. So those are things that we have to resolve with the agency owner or, you know, whoever it might be to say, hey, we can't reconcile those commissions because there haven't been any commissions paid. And so once that balance gets settled, we go back and we reconcile those commissions so that all the information is there.
Yeah.
It's not just taking data from someplace and dumping it in saying, okay, well, here you go, manage your business. I've talked to some large agencies in this space, and their struggle is I'm paying for service and I'm getting information, but I don't know what to do with the information. It's not information that I can just take and I can use. The information that we're providing it's straightforward and it's simple. And, I'll say this too. I hear you guys talk about this, and I've heard all the operators talk about the numbers don't lie. The numbers are what the numbers are. And sometimes it's hard to, you got to make hard choices. And sometimes you don't want to make hard choices because, well, I think that's kind of where, and some of our clients will tell you, hey, we'll give you information, but we'll also help just from an operational standpoint, just give some guidance and direction on some of those kind of things, because we've seen what happens when you don't take the action you need to take.
Yeah. And you know what's interesting, Adam, to kind of get specific, because people saw on social media the agent I took to the public to make aware of the debt situation because she professed herself to be some industry expert while creating tens of thousands of dollars of debt. If you looked granularly, though, at the reports, you can watch the revenue from that specific agent dwindle each and every month. And I wasn't paying close enough attention to see in the report that revenue continued to decrease. And when agents' revenue begins to decrease, we can almost predict they start to make poor decisions and rewrite their sister and roll a piece of business and put down a fake bank account. Like, I really think agents that have been doing the business, and Sean, you can agree or disagree, for a portion of time that hit a rough patch, they kind of dive into this gray area of mistakes where then they start committing fraud. Like, there are people that do good and then make bad decisions. I've witnessed as agents collapse in the business.
Yeah, and think about what happens too when an agent starts to fail is when the chargebacks start, because if they're not producing new business, then here come the chargebacks, right? So, and when those chargebacks start to happen and this agent is no longer active, whether they are on the field or on the virtual or whatever it might be, that's where they start to get in a hole. And as you as an operator saying, okay, hey, no, there isn't new business. The agent's not engaged. I'm seeing chargebacks on my reports though. Okay, I need to address this right now with this agent and say, hey, what's your plan? Let's address this up front. Again, it's the information that allows an operator and a manager to do their job and mitigate risk, but also manage their agents. That's because, again, you may be able to help that agent get re-engaged and say, hey, look, here's what's coming for you. This is the problem that you have in front of you. These chargebacks are real. The insurance company is looking for their money back here. And if you don't settle that, there's the potential that it rolls to me. And then you and I have an issue from a legal perspective.
Yeah. I think what's interesting, and you've mentioned it a few times, is the idea of valuations and creating a tangible business that can be transacted. I mean, we've watched so many IMOs and agencies sell to private equity over the last 5 years. What actually goes into that? Because you don't just walk up to the table and say, hey, look at me, I'm an agency. Will you buy me? Oh, sure. Here's $6 million. Like, without getting too in the weeds about it, what does someone need to even bring to the table of that conversation?
Yeah. And this is probably one of my, this is where I grew up in M&A. And so, when that transaction happened, it was, start to finish, handled it all the way through. But here was the problem with it, even with this IMO, Chris, or even transactions and others. If you don't have the information available and to have a conversation about an acquisition, being acquired, merging, whatever it might be, you've already put yourself in a disadvantage from a valuation perspective. And so we had to bring in teams to create the information over the last 2 years, which took a tremendous amount of time and resource to do that. But also from a valuation perspective, if you've got the information at your fingertips and you can provide, and I've heard from others that have tried to go and sit down and talk with a private equity company or one of these large aggregators. And it was somewhat embarrassing for them. These people are asking questions that they don't have answers to, and they don't have the information of. And so then if I'm an acquirer and I'm having this conversation with you, I'm not sure how much I'm willing to pay for this business because I don't know what risks there are in this business because I don't have the information. Right. Mm-hmm. And so where that starts with is if you can provide good, clean financials, but not only that, think about how much detail you can provide about agents and policies. And I mean, the entire book of business you have, mm-hmm. and the longer you have that information, the more value you have. So I can look at your agents and say, hey, look, he's a really engaged operator because of the success of his agents. Here's where, when there's an issue, this is how he addresses those issues. This is how he limits his risk exposure with the daily submitted reports and commission tracking. So from a valuation perspective, if agency owners, at the end of the day, most entrepreneurs you should prepare your business for sale day one. Or if you haven't, then the sooner you start, the better off you are. And so if you want to create value, the way that you have to create value in your business is by having, you have to have a good business. You have to be a good operator and obviously be profitable and growing and those kinds of things. First thing I do is look at is profitability. Is this business increasing or decreasing in profits? Are they increasing, decreasing in revenues? How good of operators are they? I can just go down the list of things things that I'll look at. But yeah, I mean, the information is key. And someone saying, so all those things I would look at as an acquirer, those are the things that we're putting together for operators with this information.
Yeah. And Adam, there's a lot of vanity metrics online where people post this and say that and proclaim this. But realistically, is that actually what's going into their business bank account that can be valued and acquired and purchased or just simply even tracked? Like there's so much stuff online that maybe isn't real, right?
Yeah. I love the fact that, with what is going on here with Sean, it really kind of can show people proof of really what's going on of, like you said, when you can kind of track everything and see where things are at. One thing I was wondering about, like what would an agency owner have to provide to you, Sean, like in order to be able to receive or have the proper information to that you guys need to be able to show the metrics and everything else to.
Yeah. I mean, first
better.
and foremost is carriers. What carriers do you have? How many carriers do you have?
Okay.
How many agents, do you have that are writing? Really, those give us a pretty good idea of what we're dealing with from a resource perspective. And I think what agency owners or builders or whoever is listening to this and will listen to this is, I think what you'll find is the cost to value is extremely good. Not only from running your business, but how much it can save you in simply debt rolls. And then if you want to add on to that and say, okay, I'm thinking about a year from now that I'd like to sell my business, or 2 years from now, whatever the time frame is, then start today in preparing this, because once that day comes, and you also then have access to a team like us that says, okay, do you want our assistance in taking this thing and putting together a pitch book and taking this out to private equity and helping you with due diligence? Well, we've already done all the work with due diligence because we provided we've got all the commission accounting. You've got all the information here. Contracts, you have to, there's obviously understanding, having a legal team that can go through that and prepare documents. So that's kind of the other part of this is, well, here's the work that we can do to help you be a good operator and a business owner and those kinds of things, and help you limit risk. But then we can also help you get to where you want to cash this thing in at some point. That's kind of always a thing. There's always been a big talk since I've been around this space about, hey, I want to cash in. I want to be able to do this. Well, that's great, but you got to have everything ready to do that and understand how it works. Otherwise,
you're analyzing. You take all the data, you analyze it. Like you notice something that just doesn't look right. You guys right away kind of reach out to the.
And we do, and even on things where, because again, it's crazy, but I glance at almost every report that comes out, and just like, I'll shoot an email that says, hey, I'm sure you've got a process for this, but did you see this on here? And it's not me. I'm just putting it out there. Operators can do what they want with it. I'm just trying to maybe, I know everyone, they run hard and maybe at the field for 4 days in a row or whatever it is.
Yeah.
It's those kind of things where it says, and even we're our director of operation, Kirsten, where she'll say, hey, I'm seeing something on these are commission statements about this agent. Are you aware that they're doing this? Or, hey, this agent was in a debt situation. Did you make any changes with their contracts because they're still writing business with you?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, dang, that's not good.
Yeah, I got that one. I got that email before.
Chris got one of those.
This person supposed to be terminated. They're still producing under you.
Yeah.
And when you're, Adam, this, like when you're out there 2, 3, 4 days a week trying to pay your bills, produce, disposition your leads, recruit, train, those things are easy to slip through the cracks. I had one recently. And Kristen's even in our agency group chat, just so there's even more eyes on what's happening for everybody's benefit. He's like, I see this agent posting production. He's not in your hierarchy. Yes. I can see in the carrier portal, and then we got on the phone to confirm it. That person's not in your hierarchy, and it wasn't that it was a contracting problem. It wasn't like they were sneaking around and saying it. It wasn't. They weren't set up properly. Yep. So that kind of like micro observational stuff, especially when it's hard to afford the platform, is so important, because you're never going to get any bigger if you get eaten up by debt in the process.
Yeah.
I have a question. What about like, I know you said you kind of track the commission statements. Commission statements usually going to show the policy that was written and the commission that was earned on it. Also usually shows like the policy holder's name. You guys track that stuff too? Like if there was a chargeback with one carrier and then you notice that the agent wrote that business with another carrier, like they see the same policy holder's name. So then they're getting paid a new commission on the new one, but then they still owe this other carrier money.
Yeah, we provide it in a format you can slice and dice information however you want. And so, yeah, you can track it. So it'll show that. So in this case, everything's sorted by agent first, then you can sort it from however you want from there. But you will see new business, renewals, chargebacks, adjustments, anything for that agent is detailed in the reports. And so, we'll send over one report, but it's got 5, 6, 7 tabs on it with different information by carrier, by agent, detailed policy information. So you can see if an agent is churning business. You can go, I mean, it's not hard to identify pretty quickly. You may see part of it as your daily submitted reports, but you really see it in your commission reports for sure.
Yeah. And it's just interesting because I think a lot of people don't think of themselves as a business operator or a business owner or a business anything, because that's not something that's really taught much in this industry. So just hearing the way you keep phrasing that is in a very different view of this business too.
Yeah, part of that's again, I don't come from this space. So, mine is, and you'll hear private equity talk a lot about operators, because when they invest in businesses, those are operators of their businesses. And so, that's how they are. Even public companies, you'll hear a lot about a CEO as an operator. That she's a great operator of that business. And really at the end of the day, that's what you guys are is you're building something. Obviously you're creating a livelihood for yourself, but you're also creating value in something that has significant value. What we're trying to provide is something that can be specialized to agency owners, can be specialized to builders, IMOs. And it's something that I was shocked about in the beginning. I'm still remain shocked about today that there aren't people doing what we're talking about today and doing and providing. And the part of it is it's not easy to do. You can have someone probably pull data for you, but I'm not convinced it's usable data. You have to have it in a format, and you have to have the information that you as an operator that doesn't want to take 4 hours out of the day to do something with. You want to be able to say, hey, look, I got 30 minutes. I want to take a look at my daily submitted report. I'm going to look at my weekly commissions to figure out what I've got. And do I have any issues here? And also, are my agents successful? I've got some new agents on, and how they're telling me they're writing all this business. Well, I'm looking at the daily submitted reports, and they are, but the policies, we're not receiving commissions on those. Is something happening in underwriting? Is something happening where they've got the wrong dates? They're not using Social Security billing. They're not those kinds of things that you may have a really good agent, but they need more from you as the manager, the operator, right?
Makes sense. I don't know how exciting this is, but I'm just curious. There are different kinds of deals though that are struck once you get to the table. There's deals where an agency sells their entire business, they get out, maybe they're paid a salary for a few years, but then it's not theirs anymore. There's deals that are struck where maybe you retain some level of ownership, but somebody else owns most of it now. Are there any kind of standards that, people go to the table looking for option 1, 2, or 3 when they sell, or is it all really kind of custom based on the situation?
It's hundreds of transactions, and I was started with, you tell me what you want and I'll set the terms. That was it. So there's all kinds of ways to put a deal together. Think about it like this. These are intangible asset businesses. So someone's not purchasing property or building or whatever. These are intangible asset businesses. It always starts with a value of the earnings, right? And so profitability is key for, the value. Now, that multiple of that, of those earnings is based on several factors, kind of like what I've talked about. How stable are those earnings? How reliable are those earnings? Is this on a growth trajectory up, or is it flat? Has it been flat for the last year, 2 years? Is it declining? Again, the things we talked about, what kind of systems and processes are in place for this business that limit risk, that promote agent success, agent recruitment? Are they bringing on new agents they have a pipeline of new agents that are coming on? So I can go through all of those things and come back to, okay, well, this is what I feel like this business is worth based on all of these things. Some businesses will be better than others. Is there always a deal to do? Sure. But it's really all about those things and then size. How big is it? Can I tuck it into something? A lot of times if I can tuck it into another business, and that's worth more to me.
Interesting.
So I've heard all kinds of deals in this space already, whether it's partial stock, partial cash, earnouts. Earnouts are typically that's maybe not necessarily in this space, but it could be. There's all kinds of ways to structure those deals. And kind of once you get to that point, it's making sure that you've got your business in the best possible situation to get the most value you can out of it. That's first and foremost is really
sense. Makes sense. Adam, any ground level, mid-level stuff that you might want to throw his way for those that benefit from hearing more about how to protect themselves from roll up, see their business, stuff like that?
Nothing that I can really think of. I think the information's been very valuable. I think that it's something that, honestly, I think anybody who's running an agency needs. As I mentioned earlier, when I went independent, that was like the one thing right away. I'm thinking, God, how am I going to be able to keep track of all this stuff? I mean, it's so hard, but I just know from the position that I was in, the importance of keeping track of that because of the stuff that we don't like talking about. The stuff, we talk about how, people love talking about all the production that they do and everything else. Nobody wants to talk about the negatives and the fact that not all the business stays on the books, and the fact that when you're building, sometimes you have some bad apples that you recruit that you don't even realize that are going to just write bad business right out the gate. I think it definitely helps to have, it's definitely worth it. Well, I don't even know, what you guys charge or how any of that works. But I mean, I think it's definitely worth the investment, whatever it is, because it's going to protect the agency owners, like you said, Sean, from their livelihoods and maybe even keeping them in business. I mean, it could be pretty scary, the things that can happen. I've seen tons of agents. I mean, God, I've tried to recruit agents and they go through contracting and then I get a email back, oh, they have $100,000 vector. And a lot of these guys were agency owners that were told, go ahead, recruit as many people as you want. And they had no idea that there was even like a thing called roll-up debt. They had no idea that if that business fell off, that it would actually fall on them. And when they realized it, I'm sure they would have wished, man, I wish that I would have had something like this in my back pocket to be able to protect me. Yeah.
Again, it'll come back to those things. How many carriers, what carriers, number of agents. But again, I think what they'll find if anybody wants to reach out and talk about their situation and, kind of what it looks like for them, happy to have that. But from the pricing standpoint, I think what these agents will find, this is not tens of thousands of dollars a month type of cost. What they're going to find is if I had to hire someone to try to do what we're talking about doing with all of these carriers, it doesn't make any sense. And you have to develop the expertise first. You guys know these dealing with these carriers. They do different things. Their accounting is not great in many cases. They're not. But it will benefit on so many levels. You could almost argue that the commission accounting part of this is free based on the debt management that it provides the operators. If it saves me from a $10,000 debt, or if it saves me from a $20,000 debt only being a $3,000 debt, I'll take that all day long. Right. Yeah. If you think about a 12-month period, how much, you can ask some of the people that use our services, how much it saves them in potential debt rolls on a daily basis. If they're a big active agency, it's the first thing they're looking at is that daily submitted report. And they are contacting contract to say, I want that as earned. I want that declined. They're allowing it to get ahead of it before, they got all their commission, and now I'm looking at a $30,000 debt roll.
Yeah. So, Adam, there's carriers that don't even as earned controlled business anymore because the process is so electronic. It's so streamlined. It's so lacks human interaction. You could write Katie up a policy and for a max advance, and you're going to get max advanced because they don't filter that out. No. They alerted me to a case, and it was a perfectly clean piece of business, but it was controlled business. And for me to protect that from being bad business, the agent was on as earned for the whole week. Like they didn't have an individual as earned option on controlled business. No. So I just think it's definitely extremely valuable. I got one last question, Sean, because I talk to agents out there who are so first year driven, so not worried about residuals and renewal income. They'll sell products with no renewals or zero. Like they're so focused on first year commission. They're not thinking about next week or next year or 5 years from now. As someone who values businesses and looks at the books, how important is stable, growing residual and renewal income in the evaluation of a company?
It's worth more. I think back to the property casualty. Well, that was mostly renewal commissions versus first year. That's just how that business worked. Obviously less, but I would say this: I would take a look at the processes they have in place for new business production, and if they have a system and it has shown to be systematic and stable as far as how they produce new business, then I can get comfortable with a valuation that is reasonable there. If they have a lot more renewal and not as good of upfront new business production, I could value that differently as well. Meaning, there are parts that go into all of that, right? There's I'd have to look and say, okay, renewals will always be worth more than just first year commissions. But if there's not a good process in place for new business production, if these guys aren't recruiting new agents, and if new agents aren't being successful, if they're just churning through agents, that's not as valuable to me. And if they've got a good stable of agents, and I know agents come and go, that happens, right? But is the operator doing a good job of bringing new in? How do they train their agents? What's the success rate of those new agents? But they've also got a nice stable of agents that have been around for 3-5 years that have a nice, good renewal stream. I get a good renewal stream from those guys. So not a great answer to your question, but there are different valuation metrics when you're looking at these businesses. And I think as an operator, I always think as an entrepreneur, as an operator, right? How can I get the most value out of my business at the end of the day? Can I generate some good revenue and income for myself? But then I have to do this so that when I want to push the button and cash out, I'm going to get a great value for my business that I've worked my tail off for the last 5, 10, 15, 20 years, whatever it was. So.
I kept hearing you say process, and that's valuable. We're talking about, we're looking to onboard what's almost 4 new people this morning, Adam, and it's all process. It's literally step 1. You did your contract. Step 2, you have an agent number. Sign up for these tools. Step 3, meet and greet. Let's make sure you're a real person and you're capable of getting on a video call to confirm you're a real person. Now, what's your lead program? No leads, not an option. You got leads. Now go out and show us that you want to make it happen for yourself. And that's a process in itself. And having a process to run the business is actually running the business, not just making it up as you go. So I appreciate you taking the time today. We said 30 minutes. We're at 37. If you guys took anything away from today's conversation, you took a lot away, I'm sure. But if you want to contact Sean, he'll give you his information right now about working with Post-Rock, what they do, and having a deeper conversation about what that would do for your business. So Sean, share however people can get a hold of you if they'd like to talk further.
Yeah, they can go to the website, postrockfinancial.com. There's information there. There's also a form they can submit there for inquiry. Myself or someone will reach out to them to have a conversation. If they want to speak with me specifically, just request that and I'll give them a call. And on there's, again, contact information, email address if they want to send an email that way, but postrockfinancial.com. And let us know that you watched this, and happy to talk with anybody, really. If you feel like you're not sure if it's for you, give us a call and we can talk that through with you for sure.
Outstanding. Appreciate you taking the time with us today, and hopefully you guys learned something. If you did, contact them, talk further, and drop a comment, and we'll see you guys soon.
Thanks, guys.
And this concludes another episode of the Insurance, Life, and Everything in Between podcast. If you like what you heard, don't forget to subscribe, share with a friend or colleague, and if you have any comments or suggestions for future episodes, please leave those too. Any input is greatly appreciated. Thank you.